We are Rogue Media Sports.
Dogs are an important part of our lives, and keeping them protected is a top priority, especially against nasty parasites. That's why you gotta check out NexGard Plus, afoxolaner, moxidectin, and pyrantel chewable tablets. NexGard Plus chews provide one-and-done monthly protection that kills fleas and ticks, prevents heartworm disease. Plus, it treats and controls roundworms and hookworms. That's a whole lot of protection packed into a delicious beef-flavored, soft chew designed to make monthly dosing easy and enjoyable. So the next time you're at the vet, ask about NexGard Plus chews. They're the one-and-done monthly parasite protection you want for your dog. Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures or neurologic disorders. Dogs should be tested for existing heartworm infection prior to starting a preventive.
Vanguard is working hard to balance opportunity and risk for investors in this time of volatile yields. We know financial advisors are working hard to do the same. Visit Vanguard.com/fixed income today. Important information. All investing is subject to risk, including the possible loss of the money you invest. Bond funds are subject to the risk that an issuer will fail to make payments on time, and that bond prices will decline because of rising interest rates or negative perceptions of an issuer's ability to make payments. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor.
All right, in the aftermath of the Cowboys' 20-17 win over the Los Angeles Chargers, Ed Werder, live from Los Angeles, just the glow of that place, that SoFi Stadium does really pop on camera. And Ed, before we start breaking down the game, and of course we'll have stretch plays with Glenn Stretch Smith, and we'll get to all that. But shots of Jimmy and Jerry hugging it out. I felt like I kept looking in the shots of that on ESPN's Monday Night Football, and of course on ABC as well, and thinking you would be lurking back there. But I understand that Jerry was purposely ducking you before this game.
Yeah, so last week, obviously, I told you I spent like a half an hour at the end of pregame warmups talking to Jerry Jones, and PR man Tad was there, and we had a nice talk about what they were expecting and so forth. And then obviously the Cowboys went out, lost by 32 points. And so Jerry associated that conversation with being detrimental, being superstitious, as most people in athletics are. No matter how much money they make or how many times they win, they're superstitious as can be. And so Jerry thought, well, I talked to Ed extensively before the last game, and look what happened. There he is now again, and he's hiding playfully hiding behind Tad, the PR guy, and saying, I finally said, well, Tad, if you see Jerry, tell him I was looking for him and wish him well. I'm sure he'll be here eventually, but I haven't seen him yet. So, and the other thing about, yeah, you're right. I mean, that stadium is just an amazing looking place. And, it's interesting because it's covered, but it's not indoors. It's not enclosed. It has a canopy over the playing field. And so there is a lot of natural light that comes in, and, some air finds its way through and filters through. And there are so many Cowboy fans in Southern California and so few Charger fans competing in this market with the Rams, that like when we were waiting for the press conferences and stuff and the game was ending and the crowd would cheer, we were never sure if it was something the Chargers had just done well or the Cowboys clinching the game with the Micah Parsons sack and the Stephon Gilmore interception that caused the eruption. But the Cowboys were playing essentially a home game in somebody else's stadium tonight.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, and the Cowboys got a much needed win. And what an incredible day for Dallas-Fort Worth, fans, sports fans, as the Rangers take down the Astros 5-4 to take a commanding 2-0 lead in the ALCS, and then the Cowboys get it done at night. It's hard to beat this Monday for the Cowboys and Rangers. It's a great day to be a fan in the Metroplex, and even Ed may get caught up in this, even as a longtime Braves fan. He may get caught up in this Rangers hysteria. All right, Steven Simcox, who's doing an incredible job for us, Stephen, please play the music. All right, there it is. And the Doomsday Podcast, of course, brought to you by Marable Homes, Hudson Financial Group, HFG. More to come on Marable Homes as we get into the program, but phenomenal custom luxury homes being built all over the Dallas area. And we're talking Preston Hollow, Lake Highlands, Cedar Creek Lake, Park Cities, Highland Park. They are gorgeous and they are numerous and they are wonderful partners of the Doomsday Podcast. All right, Ed, the Cowboys in the end get the win. I mean, this thing started about it was kind of like, oh my gosh, is this going to be a continuation of San Francisco? Cowboys come out, can't do anything on the first drive. Chargers take it right down the field and score. And I could not help, Ed, but think about, and see that shot of Kellen Moore over there celebrating when to score in the red zone, something the Cowboys have had a lot of trouble with this season. Basically, he just had to send a player in motion. And then that player, who also happens to be one of the greatest receivers in Chargers history, just kind of went in motion and then was wide open for a touchdown. Easy does it. What were you thinking early in the game? Were you kind of thinking, this is going to be a continuation of what we saw in San Francisco?
Yeah, it looked very much like the beginning of the 49ers game, with the exception the Cowboys got the ball first tonight. But yeah, Dak Prescott getting sacked on third down and going 3 and out, having to punt right away. And the Chargers actually scored 3 touchdowns, I think, before they got one that counted. The Tony Pollard fumble that they returned inside the 5, which was determined that he was down before he fumbled. And then there was an illegal motion or shift, I guess, that negated another Chargers touchdown before the one you're talking about to Keenan Allen. And just what a great idea. Put a man in motion, create some distraction for the defense, some uncertainty, and design the play around your best receiver and have your great quarterback throwing the ball. It's simple. But yeah, it did look like an ominous start for the Cowboys, but I got the sense coming out of the game that it was a long wait for them to be able to get back out there after that humiliating 32-point loss to the 49ers, where they had such great expectations of how they were going to play. It's been a long week for them waiting to get back out on the football field to redeem themselves. And eventually they accomplished that. Dak Prescott, he was asked about, did you look at this as a must-win game? And he said, it's odd his sudden use of profanity, and he feels quite comfortable using it now. And he said, yeah, and he seems to be doing that all the time now, dropping S-bombs all over the place when he's on TV. But yeah, I mean, he noted the difference between 3-3 and 4-2 going into your bye week was, really significant, and said now he can actually enjoy his bye week after all the criticism he and his teammates justifiably endured following the 49er loss. But then to do this after the Eagles and 49ers, the last 2 undefeated teams in football, both lost to AFC teams. The Cowboys, I think, are the only team that played an NFC versus AFC game, and the NFC team won was just this one. So they gained a game on each of those 2 teams this weekend.
Ed, and I'm sure in that package, I cannot wait to see this. I need to see when it goes online, that you did a piece after the game on Dak. And you and I, one of our most enduring themes is the Cowboys seem to function better, and Dak seems to function better when he starts running the football. And on a zone read, he sold it really well. They had a little motion, had a little deception, and everybody kind of either went with Pollard or CeeDee Lamb, and Dak runs for the end zone. Ed, I think since it was an 18-yard touchdown, that counted as a red zone score. All right. So that's really going to help the Cowboys in their red zone woes. But that was I think that was a sight for sore eyes for Cowboys fans. Yeah, I think it was smart to get him in space like that. That was a 4th and 1 play that he went for 18 yards. And then even later in the half, when he would look out, realize they were in man-to-man coverage, and he had a lot of space to run. And I just, man, that sort of opened things up in a sense for then he started passing on the run. I still am a little amused that they have this Texas Coast offense, and yet the best parts of the offense in this game were when plays broke down. It wasn't really, I think, in the true sense of like whatever that offense is supposed to be. It was Dak,
it was a second play.
Yes, yeah. It was
what
extending plays.
McCarthy calls what happens after 2.3 seconds, right? It's the play you make after the play that you called didn't work. And yeah, my post-game piece was actually on the fact that, Dak Prescott was kind of tonight more the quarterback he was early in his career when he was a dual threat guy before the 2020, gruesome leg injury and before all the $40 million contracts, when he was just playing football and he was as dangerous as a runner as he was a passer. And that's when he seems to play his best. He used to talk about how it had an effect on the emotions of his team to see him get hit, to see demonstrably how much he wanted to win the game, how much he wanted to make a play. And he did that more in this game than in any game I can remember recently. In fact, one of the reasons he said the 18-yard read option play worked so well is because he hadn't done it in so long. And the Chargers weren't expecting him to keep the ball in that situation. And he ran in 18 yards virtually untouched, longest touchdown run of his career. And if you look over the entire night, he had 7 rushes for 40 yards. He ran for more yards than Tony Pollard or Austin Eckler in the game. His 7 carries and his 40 yards were both season highs. And the Cowboys are, virtually unbeatable when Dak has 5 or more runs in a game. But that element had gone away for whatever reason, because of the experience they had with his injury and losing him and recognizing his value in that regard, or recognizing the expense of $40 million sitting on the bench if he gets hurt. So I thought that was a key to the whole game, was Dak's mobility in terms of, as you said, extending plays and then also adding to it on the run. He went 5 for 7 for 101 yards from outside the pocket, including that 60-yard extemporaneous pass play to Tony Pollard. The 101 yards, that's the 4th most in his career from outside the pocket. So this was the kind of Dak we have not seen play quarterback for the Cowboys very recently.
I think I noticed, Ed, that somebody tweeted that he was almost perfect on throws other than throws to Gallup. It was like his numbers were amazing. He missed Gallup on one throw up the seam. He then hit him. He actually threw maybe his best ball of the night, and Gallup, who may have been interfered with, but still should have caught it. He dropped it in the breadbasket. I think, Ed, there were one of the really good developments, CeeDee Lamb, after admittedly kind of being in a funk and his actions on the sideline. And I think Dak and Mike McCarthy had to talk to him last week, came out, had a tremendous ball game. Was just very active, 117 yards receiving. And then Brandon Cooks got involved. And in fact, one of the biggest plays of the night on a 3rd and 9, of course, he caught a touchdown pass as well. But the 3rd and 9 play was huge, because it came on the game-winning drive that turned out to be that it resulted in a field goal. And that was good. I guess, Ed, the downside is Dak missed a wide open Pollard. I mean, they ran that wheel route. Kenneth Murray from Oklahoma tried to cover him in the open field. He had no shot, and Dak just missed him, just completely missed him.
He didn't have very many poor throws, but that was certainly one. And he was irritated with himself in the press conference afterward about that play. the opportunity that he failed to execute it, to deliver an accurate ball for a touchdown that would have put the game out of reach, and instead, forced the defense to have to go back out and close out the Chargers. But Dak did think that, this is the first close game they played this year. And Dak mentioned that he thought there was a lot of value in that, and that he told the guys in the huddle that this is the way, for those of you who are new, this is the way the NFL games are usually played. Like, it's usually a close game, and you have to execute in crunch time, and they did it in this game. To your point about the receivers, I think it was good that CeeDee Lamb created attention with the coaching staff and the quarterback about his concerns about not getting enough opportunities to affect the outcome of the game. And he didn't do it in a, Des Bryant or Keyshawn Johnson sort of way, or Terrell Owens sort of way. He kind of sulked and brought attention to it that way. But he did get to meet with the coach, and he got to talk to the quarterback, and he was, as you would expect, heavily targeted in this game and highly productive as a result of that. The Gallup thing, I think there are a lot of people in the organization, including Dak, who are perplexed by the fact that he just doesn't seem to play with the same physicality that he did before that ACL injury 2 years ago. And they're not sure whether he doesn't have confidence in his leg, or he just doesn't have confidence in himself generally, but they recognize that he is a far diminished player from what he was before that injury, even now. The exception, he had one good game against Arizona, but other than that, he has not demonstrated, as much as Dak has tried to get him to be an effective part of the offense, he has not rewarded that. And eventually Dak's going to have to go somewhere else. He targeted Gallup 7 times in the first half, most on the team. And he only had 2 catches, for it. So I think there's a lot of frustration, a lot of concern about why it is he's not producing. And eventually they're going to move on to Jalen Tolbert if this continues.
Yeah, I would move on to Tolbert just to get him off special teams.
Well, I tweeted, and of course, you get a lot of responses when you tweet criticism about the Cowboys if it has any kind of historic context. And when he made that mistake on special teams and turned the ball over at a key point in the game that allowed the Chargers to tie the game in the fourth quarter, I said that was one of the worst special teams blunders for the Cowboys since Leon Lett. And somebody said, is it worse than Tony Romo, dropping the snap in Seattle? Well, of course not. It was a playoff game, and it wound up being Bill Parcells' last game in the NFL as a head coach. So of course it wasn't of that magnitude, but it was still a pretty big mistake, and he's fortunate the Cowboys were able to recover from it.
Yeah, it just looked really bizarre because I think everybody else realized that the ball hadn't hit him or his teammate Turpin, and yet he goes diving in there, and it's like, what in the world could you possibly be doing? And as people have pointed out, they're like, well, it's a hustle play. Well, it was a play that almost got them beat, is what it was, and they were able to overcome it. But the Chargers obviously went down there, and they took them until 4th down, but they were able to punch it in and make it 17-17. Ed, before we move on to a little defensive talk, and we'll get stretch plays in, let's talk about something that you and I may have led with and may have talked a bunch about if they'd have lost this game. I really strange, in a guy like Mike McCarthy, who does like to go for it at times, and they went for it on a quarterback sneak, and they're the one team in the league that can't do the tush push apparently, and could not get a yard, on that. But they get down there before the end of the first half, and they've got like 2 timeouts, and there's 8 after one of those runs with 14 seconds left. There's 8
Pass
seconds
to Pollard
left
in the middle of the field. 8
yeah.
seconds on the clock, 2 timeouts, and McCarthy decides to talk the officials into, no, don't stop the clock now. I'm going to take a timeout with 3 seconds left and kick a field goal. Like, the officials fully expected McCarthy would try to stop the clock and get another offensive play. Like, you have a $40 million quarterback. He's played in the league for 8 years. Like, if you can't trust him to not get caught holding the ball or throwing an interception in that situation, then he probably shouldn't be your quarterback. But I asked McCarthy about that decision, his strategy after the game, and he tried to explain it by saying, given the experience that they had just had on the previous possession you mentioned, they got down to the same place. It was 4th and 1 on the 13, on the Charger 13. And instead of kicking the field goal and breaking the tie, giving them a 10-7 lead, he opted to try the brotherly shove play that only Philadelphia seems to be able to execute every single time, something we'd never seen the Cowboys try. And Dak, after the game, calling it like you did, the tush push, which I think is a revolting term, said that he was not his tush was not pushed enough, is what he said. But yeah, I mean, to then do that and then turn around the next time you're down there, and now time's a factor the second time. And I asked Dak about it too, but McCarthy was saying he didn't want to get another holding penalty. He did not want to go into halftime without the lead. Didn't want to fail to get points twice down there. And so for that reason, he made a very conservative decision. One I would suggest most people interpret as a head coach not trusting his players and specifically not trusting his quarterback. Although when I asked Dak Prescott about that, he explained it away as well and did not take offense at it. But under the circumstances, he might not want to have called attention to that kind of strategy and its potential implications.
I think he was being gracious, and there are a lot of quarterbacks, including Aaron Rodgers and others, who would not have been as gracious and would have gone on the coach right there in front of everybody, because it was just a strange, and it honestly threw off the announcers. Ed, I know you were at the game, so you weren't hearing the broadcast, but they literally were trying to figure out, like, Joe Buck was trying to figure out if he missed a play somewhere. Like they did not know what happened when they went to commercial and they came back, and then there's 3 seconds, and it was very disjointed. And to viewers at home, they literally had no clue why that decision was made to keep winding the clock. In fact, the person who stopped the clock was the clock operator at the stadium. I think they anticipated the coach calling a timeout, and they had to honor his wishes. Okay, let's talk some defense in a minute. It is time to get to our stretch plays with former assistant coach and scout for the Cowboys, Glenn Stretch Smith. And I think you're going to be a little surprised at how harsh he is after a win with his well-known and much criticized grading system. Here he is. It is now time for Stretch Plays with former Cowboys scout and coach Glenn Stretch Smith. You see him on WFAA, Channel 8, ABC affiliate in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Been on radio for many years. And Stretch, the people, I think everybody feels good about the win. You go on the road. Let's not act like that's the toughest road environment in the world, because you have a lot of Cowboys fans in there. But the quarterback, let's start with Dak. And because everybody always wants to hear your grade on him. Numbers were fine and certainly made some plays with his feet. I would say, my thought, Stretch, is it does seem like when he's able to run early in a game, and he ran for that touchdown, I think that does kind of help the team and maybe gives him a little more confidence and rhythm. Is that what you saw? And what were your overall thoughts on how Dak performed?
Yeah, I mean, he made a good read on that zone read pull, went and scored with it. He did a good job of keeping plays alive with his feet. He did a good job of moving in the pocket and doing those kind of things. So, ultimately he made a big enough play to extend the play and then throw the ball to Pollard. He made a couple of nice first down conversions with his feet. I think the concern again is he misses a seam throw to Gallup early in the game, and then to overthrow Pollard in that red zone throw. I mean, that's something that if you're a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, you got to make that throw. So I do believe that you saw him do some things with his feet that ultimately helped the offense. And from a grade standpoint, I mean, I just thought it was a C grade. He's got to hit those throws in the red zone. but because he was able to keep plays alive with his feet and because he was able to do some things, keeping his eyes down the field, I think that's you got to give him some credit. It's tough to go win on the road. It's tough to go 2 weeks in a row out west. I look for this team, and I really look for this quarterback, I think, to make a real move here, or if he doesn't, I think it's going to be very alarming for Cowboys fans, because he's got to start hitting these open receivers. Throwing the football, you've heard me say this before, is about controlling the nose of the football. You got to be able to turn the nose of the football in tight windows. And the fact that he overshot both of those guys tells me that, he's still got things he needs to work on, whether it's confidence in the offense, knowing where the receivers are going to be, or his ability to set his feet and let it rip. So, it's good to see him win, especially after the way they got beat last week. It was good to see him go out there, and it was good to see him make and extend some plays. And I think you gotta give him credit for doing that. And I'm one that's been as critical of grading him as anybody. But when you have to give a guy credit for doing those kind of things, I think you need to give him credit. And certainly I'm going to give him credit for that.
All right. And let's talk about Pollard. He made the great play on the throw across the middle, breaks the tackle, and goes for 60. But one of the things that helps Dak, obviously, is a couple of things. A really good defense helps him, and then a running game helps. And what I kind of wanted for you to kind of grade and let us know how much of the sort of lack of impact in the run game is the O-line? Is it the coaching, the running backs? Like, what are you seeing from the Cowboys run game? Because it certainly didn't seem to be that effective.
Yeah, and again, after the first time that they had played together, I'm talking about all five starters being against San Francisco, I looked for what would have been a quantum leap this week as far as being able to run the football. When I didn't see that, I think it is alarming. This quarterback, if he's going to take you where you want to go, which is deep into the playoffs, it is not going to be with him dropping back and throwing it 50 times a game. You have to run the football, get the safeties to come down and play action off of that. And so the fact that they're not able to run the football right now concerns me. I don't know what the dynamic is. I've called some of my guys inside the organization. A lot of times the offensive line coach will, he'll suggest the runs. He'll suggest early in the week the things that he likes. And then obviously the play caller will call those things. Sometimes the tight end coach has to do with red zone runs. And, they'll be assigned different responsibilities. I don't know what those responsibilities are right now. So it's hard for me to speak to that. I will say that I don't like some of the angles that the Cowboys line is taking. I don't like, when you block power, for instance, your center's got to go back, your right guard's got to go back. If you're running it to the right, your left guard's got to pull, and you got to take great angles. And I know that Mike Solari is a heck of an offensive line coach, and I believe an upgrade from what was here before in Joe Philbin. But right now, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing, Dowdle, who's I think a powerful runner who can hit it in there. We're not seeing those creases. We're not seeing that movement up front. 4th and 1, they try to quarterback sneak it and don't make a foot. Again, gambling on a credit card right there where he should have taken a field goal. And so I'm concerned about why they're not having any more success running the football. You can look at the film and there's certain things you can point to, but I just believe that it's not coordinated very well. They're not putting what I would feel like would be even a decent running game out there. And that is something that they must work on during this week in order to get this quarterback to where he can play action off of that run action.
The head coach at the end of the first half, it was like he faked everybody out. Even the clock operator stopped because he thought he stopped the clock at 8 seconds because he thought, like everybody thought, that McCarthy would use one of his timeouts and take a shot at the end zone. Instead, McCarthy settled for the field goal, and they do go up 10-7 at the half. What were your thoughts there? Because I think it kind of caught the broadcast, and I think a lot of our viewers and a lot of Cowboys fans by surprise. Is that a lack of trust in the quarterback, or were you okay because it came across as extremely conservative?
I felt like it was poor clock management right there too. I mean, I'm not sure that he knew that the clock was going to continue to run. That to the things that came off of the sideline to me that were alarming was that and how the half ended. And then the fact that they think that they can play Canadian football from time to time on defense. I mean, I haven't seen that since, Ryan's brother was in here where they thought they could doki-yoke them by putting 12 out there. They had to take a timeout one time. They got penalized one time for 12. Those are things that are inexcusable. So yeah, I think time management. I thought that, when here's what I'll say about all this. All I'm looking for is consistency. If you're consistent in being aggressive, then let's go be aggressive. I mean, if you're going to go for it on fourth down, you're going to make that aggressive call. But then at halftime, you're not going to use the timeout to give yourself a chance to at least take one shot in there. I don't understand that. So I think, I think that this whole Texas coast, West Coast, whatever offense it is, I think they're all kind of trying, and I'm talking about the staff, the players. I think, you look at, to me, Gallup's kind of running some what looked like, not very crisp routes. I was glad to see Cooks get involved tonight, and I gave the receivers a B grade because I thought they played well enough to get you a win. I think the offensive line pass protected well enough. I gave them a B grade, and so it really comes down to the coordination and how this head coach is going to continue. I think to get this offense going right now. Let's be honest. What we've seen the last two games at best looks very average, and I don't see a whole lot of difference from when Kellen was here to what they're doing now. I really don't. So
yeah, and it may be in the wrong direction. It may not even be right now. It doesn't even look as efficient as when Kellen was here. Certainly in the red zone. And by the way, the Chargers also had their issues as well. On the Cowboys defense stretch, I thought Marquise Bell certainly playing linebacker and getting more and more time because of Van Der Esch being out. Certainly thought he did some nice things. I thought Odigizua really came through and made some great plays. Moving up and down the line of scrimmage. But I was just curious, the overall defense, like what kind of stood out to you? I did notice, and I kind of wanted to get your take on Jordan Lewis, who, is still pretty fresh back from that injury. Man, he's chasing some people. Like there's some folks that at times seem to be running away from him a little bit.
Yeah. The defensive line, I thought. You mentioned the guys. I thought Odigizua did good. I thought Lawrence did good. I think you're continuing to see the development of Dorrance Armstrong, Hankins. They're good. Those are good football players. And I thought, B+ to the defensive line. I thought they really played well. Linebackers, you mentioned Bell coming down. Really, he's a safety out of college. at 6'2", 218. But I mean, to watch him come into the box and play with that reckless abandon, the way that he's playing, I like that. I like what, I really like. I like Clark. I like Fowler. I like those guys that are stepping up from a linebacker standpoint. We know what Parsons is. I gave the linebackers a B. Alarming to me is the secondary. I thought Bland was beat twice on double moves. I don't think he's very smooth at transitioning from a pedal to his open his hips and run. And then I think Jordan Lewis, I mean, anytime you come back from that injury, it's just going to take you some time. I did like Stephon sat on that underneath route, got that big pick. He got a PI penalty that, set him up for their last touchdown. I gave the secondary, the corners a C, and I'm giving the safeties a B, because I do think that Hooker, Curse, they are Wilson. They're physical with what they're doing. I hate that penalty again on Curse. I really do, and I know it's because he kind of bows his head. What I don't understand, and I'll never understand about that rule, is you don't go in to tackle somebody with your damn head up in the air and exposing your chin. It doesn't work that way. So, and when you're playing the game at the speed that you're playing it at, I love the way he plays. I love the way Curtis plays. And so, I gave the safeties a B. I really thought that defensively, they did a nice job containing Eckler. He's a heck of a running back. And I mean, they throw a lot of screens and they get the football to him in a lot of space. And I thought they did a nice job there. I was listening to the radio a little bit on the way home, and I hear all this concerns about these pre-snap penalties. And I think obviously those are things that got to get cleaned up. But, every time I've been around any defensive line coach that I've been around, they are always going to crowd the line of scrimmage as much as they can crowd it. And so I think that, they'll get that cleaned up. I mean, I think that's something that obviously Dan Quinn will get cleaned up. I like their aggressive nature, though, and it's hard to get guys to, hey, dial it back. Hey, no, we want to keep pressing this thing. I do think the defensive pre-snap penalties are something that they'll get worked out, and we'll end up, and it gets a little frustrating at times, a Cowboy fan, because you saw hands to the face. I mean, those are things from Sam Williams that he's got to continue to grow from. But overall, I was pleased with how the defense played. And hey, you got to give Kellen more credit. I mean, he schemed up a couple of damn nice red zone throws down there for his quarterback, where it made a one-on-one corner have to run through the trash, and they got out leverage down there. So, the other guys are on scholarship too, and it's hard to ding a guy when a play is well called. So I thought overall the defense played well, Matt.
All right. Listen, I thought appreciate your grades, and I always enjoy watching you on TV and then having you on the Doomsday Podcast. Stretch, thank you very much, and we appreciate your efforts this evening.
All right, have a great night, fellas. Thanks, appreciate it.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith with Stretch Plays. All right, there it is. And Ed, we do pause right now to bring up something I love talking about, and that is Marable Homes, timeless, classic homes, approachable luxury homes. That's what I call you, Ed. People say, "What's Werder like?" I say, very approachable, very approachable. I mean, you do need to approach them at the right time. I sent a buddy to say hi to you recently, I believe.
And in the right way.
Yeah, you just have to handle it the right way, and just kind of get in and get out. Don't try to linger too long. These homes are being built in Lake Highlands, Preston Hollow, Park Cities, Lakewood, Forest Hills, Richardson, Cedar Creek Lake, Ed, if you wanted to build one out in Flower Mound, I mean, you were a guy that has settled into a home and really raised your family there and have stayed there for many, many years. But, at some point, just a new luxury home seems like something you might look into. But this is really cool. And they also specialize in these gorgeous lake homes. And so, again, that's Marable Homes. It's Marable. And they have these are huge Cowboys fans. They have ties to the Cowboys going back to the Murkison family. Blake Marable, and again, that makes him sound old. He's actually much younger than I am, if anybody can believe that. But it's great to have Marable Homes with us, and more coming on the Hudson Financial Group. They're about to get involved with us, and so always incredible to talk about Randy Hudson and his group. Ed Werder, as we move on here, as you mentioned, it was an interesting weekend because the team that that killed the Cowboys, they come out and lose to the Browns, and the Eagles inexplicably lose to the Jets on what I thought was kind of they got cocky and tried to go for on a third down pass, and Jalen Hurts ends up throwing another interception. Ed, I think it's good to be reminded sometimes that other quarterbacks around the league, other than Dak Prescott, do throw interceptions. And in fact, Hurts has thrown several of them this season. I believe he's up to 7 now. But
that's the season total from a year ago already. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Brock Purdy got picked off yesterday too. His first interception and his first loss, at least in the regular season. It's not just Dak Prescott. I was also thinking one thing I should have added when we were talking about the strategic game management blunder that Mike McCarthy committed, which this is not his first one. But when you come out of a game against the Chargers and it's a 3-point game and everybody's questioning your strategy and not Brandon Staley's, you've really screwed up for that to be the case. Because Brandon Staley is like the big analytics guy in the NFL and makes all kinds of questionable decisions as a matter of routine, and may have made a couple tonight himself, but they were all overshadowed by the one McCarthy made right before the half. Whether he feels like he adequately explained it away or not, I'm not sure. But it was an odd thing to do. But he's fortunate. Fortunately, their defense was able to seal the victory and deny the Chargers many times inside the red zone tonight.
Yeah, and I thought Odigizua played great. DeMarcus Lawrence played really well. Marquise Bell, former safety who's playing some linebacker, he's only weighs about 215 to 218 pounds, and he comes up and makes some really good plays. And I would say just the thing that the Cowboys continue, and this is a Mike McCarthy hallmark, which I know he hates it, but he until he fixes it, it's going to keep getting brought up. But there were combined 20 penalties tonight in this game. Cowboys had 11 of them. Pre-snap, like 12 men in the huddle. They had to burn a timeout in the second half just to prevent another 12 men in the huddle. And as Stretch pointed out, that's an old Rob Ryan special, having 12 men on the field when you break the huddle. And Ed, I think whether it's lining up in the neutral zone, whether it's offsides, I mean, all this time later, this still at times seems to be a very undisciplined team.
Well, I think there have been 2 games in the NFL this year where the competing teams combined for 20 or more penalties, and the Cowboys have been involved in 2 of them. 2 of the 3 or 4 that there have been, the Cowboys have been involved twice. It has been an issue for multiple years. Didn't cost them in this game, but they're fortunate that's the case, and it's obviously something they need to take a hard look at when they self-scout during the bye week. But they've had a lot of issues. I still don't think we've seen them play an outstanding game on offense yet either. Not the kind of games that were so routine earlier in Dak's career. when the guy across the field tonight was Kellen Moore was calling the plays, and Dak was throwing for 400 yards, 300 yards as a matter of routine. Still, despite the fact that Chargers have the worst pass defense in the NFL, we're giving up 300 yards a game. Dak still didn't get a 300-yard game tonight, but at least he came close. And like I said, he executed in key moments and was good on third down in the fourth quarter. I think he had 86 passing yards on third down in the fourth quarter, which is a number only Jared Goff has surpassed at any point this year. So I think we saw some offensive improvement, but the Chargers are not a great team, and they're no more predictable than the Cowboys are at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's right. I certainly think they have some talent in, some of their wide receivers. Obviously, Eckler's a talented guy, but I don't know if, either team. It's not like you come away from this game and go, man, so-and-so, one of these teams could be a Super Bowl contender. They're not. They don't appear to be anything close to that. Now, this was a game, Monday Night Football, team just kind of crawling with ESPN types around the field. So it's not your normal situation where you kind of have the market cornered on every single person you want to talk to before games. But did you at least get to wave at Kellen or say hello?
I talked to Kellen. I did talk to Kellen, briefly. They came out. He made his way around the field. He spent some time with Dak. I saw CD hug him. I didn't see Mike McCarthy hug him. But yeah, he came out. We chatted briefly. Doug Nussmeier too, who was a quarterbacks coach under Kellen and Mike last year, and is now with the Chargers and coaching Justin Herbert. So yeah, saw all those guys. Didn't spend a lot of time with them, and it didn't wind up being a really super prominent storyline as the game was played out. I didn't think. It didn't seem to me that, both teams had their creative moments, but this wasn't a game really about play calling. I didn't think. I think it was good for Dan Quinn. He had to feel better about the way his defense played. They were, more play to their identity. They didn't get a lot of takeaways, but they had a big one at the end of the game by Stephon Gilmore that sealed it. And that was the 13th interception that Justin Herbert has thrown in the fourth quarter of a one-score game. That's 5 more than any other quarterback in the NFL has. So you talk about the Chargers blowing games that they should win. There's one stat. They've lost 9 games by 3 points or less since Brandon Staley became the head coach in 2021. That ties with the Ravens for the most in the NFL. So not really a surprise that the Cowboys defense took over at the end of the game.
And just to explain it to our folks on that special teams play, the blunder, I think people kind of were wondering, well, if he called for a fair catch and somebody runs into him, I think from what we could tell, the rule is if it doesn't even matter if you shove somebody into them, it's almost like it's the whoever's trying to field the punt. He's got to avoid that. It's not. And so again, everybody involved in that part of it was okay, and nobody touched the ball. And as long as Tolbert didn't go running in there, Cowboys would have been fine, and they would have had the ball right there, and where the Chargers were going to down it. And I think the Chargers were almost confused. I think somebody almost reached out to try to get the ball first, because it's like, wait, why is Tolbert sliding in here?
Almost beat Tolbert to the ball, and then it would have just been down. But yeah, so a lot of people from what I've seen on social media reacted with well, he called for a fair catch. How is that not fair catch interference? So to get the explanation directly from the league office, you have to go to the pool reporter and activate the pool reporter to interview Walt Anderson, who's the referee, head of officiating for the NFL in New York. And so I did that. I made that request. And the response we got was that according to the rule, as long as a member of the coverage team, the opposing team, does not make contact with, in this case, Cavante, then it's a fair play. Like, you can take the guy that's blocking you and shove him or throw him into the returner who's called for a fair catch, and it's a legal play. They really could have called face mask on the guy that was blocking against him. who was blocking against Jalen Tolbert, but they obviously chose not to do that. And so, yeah, Jasir Taylor, I think, was the player he was engaged with when he got pushed into Cavante Turpin, causing that fumble. But apparently it was officiated correctly, according to Walt Anderson. And there's your answer as to why that's not fair catch interference. It's because the coverage team used an offensive player to basically run him into the returner as he was trying to cover the kick.
Okay, and Ed, Cowboys now 4-2 will have their bye week, and then we'll host the Rams. I think Coach McVay just had a child, or his wife had a child, and because he was not going to coach if she went into labor on game day. But they were able to, I think they held off on that, and they were able to win the game. Rams at Cowboys, and we're getting vibes that that's a game that could potentially be flexed into, because Sunday Night Football has a kind of a rough one. I think the Bears are involved. Anything the Bears are involved is a bad game. And so, Ed, we'll see what happens with that. But I think the Cowboys are always potentially, and again, there are some rules on like how many times certain teams can be in prime time. But I mean, all of these networks is if they could flex into the Cowboys, they almost always do it.
Yeah, apparently the Bears are not much of a draw, and they're no draw whatsoever when they don't have Justin Fields, and he dislocated his thumb on his passing hand. So now the expectation is he might miss multiple games. And if the Cowboys are available to play on a Sunday night primetime game, NBC would love to do that. So if that happens, we'll go from our only noon home start with plenty of time to do an early podcast to right back to doing it after midnight like we are right now.
Yeah, local time is 1:52 as we finish, but who's keeping? I did, once I announced, Ed, to our producer, fill-in producer, Stephen Simcox, that potentially could be another kind of midnight situation. He has opted out. He's now
he's turned down your offer.
That's right.
That's why he's just a fill-in guy now. He's not permanent.
I mean, I'd love him to be permanent, but right now I'm struggling on that front with all these late games. But Ed, good work from you. Appreciate it. And boy, thanks to Marable Holmes. Thanks to everybody. And then Ed, safe travels. Okay. And then we'll be waiting for you when you get home, and we'll probably take the bye week off, but we'll be ready to roll when it's time to get it on with those Rams, no matter what time the game is.
Well, I'm from here. This is the first of 3 games I have on the road this week. I'm doing the Thursday night Jacksonville at New Orleans game where Trevor Lawrence's health is in question. And then on Sunday, I will be covering the Cleveland Browns at the Indianapolis Colts, another team with a quarterback in question because of an injury in Deshaun Watson. So I'll get a look at 4 other teams should they become part of our conversation going forward.
All right. Good to see you slowing down and enjoying the bye week. Ed, sleep quick and sleep well. And for Stephen Simcox and Ed Werder, I am Matt Mosley. This has been the Doomsday Podcast. Good night, folks.
Vanguard is working hard to balance opportunity and risk for investors in this time of volatile yields. We know financial advisors are working hard to do the same. Visit Vanguard.com/fixed income today. Important information. All investing is subject to risk, including the possible loss of the money you invest. Bond funds are subject to the risk that an issuer will fail to make payments on time, and that bond prices will decline because of rising interest rates or negative perceptions of an issuer's ability to make payments. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor. With the Wells Fargo Active Cash Credit Card, you can earn unlimited 2% cash rewards on purchases you want and purchases you need. That means you earn on what you want, like trying out that new workout class, and 2% cash rewards on what you need, like a foam roller for your sore muscles. That's the beauty of the Active Cash Credit Card. It's ready when you are, with unlimited 2% cash rewards. The Wells Fargo Active Cash Credit Card. That's real life ready. Terms apply. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/activecash.